from the heart of where innovation, money, and power collide. In Silicon Valley and beyond, this is Bloomberg Technology with Emily Chang.
I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up in the next hour, Elon Musk tries to back out of the $44 billion Twitter deal again. Twitter rejects him again. All this a day before the whistleblower is scheduled to testify on Capitol Hill. How could that change the trial? We'll discuss. Plus, streaming platforms going all out for sports broadcast rights. A conversation with Amazon's global sports video vice president on its big ticket deal for Thursday Night Football. And more leagues making bets on the blockchain. An NFT startup backed by Serena Williams just got a big deal with the NBA. We're going to talk to a top exec at SoRare later this hour. All of that in a moment, but first I want to get a look at the markets. Tech leading gains in equities with key inflation data to come later in the week. Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow is in New York with the latest. Ed?
Hey, and we also got some breaking news after the bell, but I want to go over quickly. Peloton co-founder and executive chairman John Foley is leaving the company. The company announced after the market closed Monday. The chief legal officer, Hisao Kushi, who is also the co-founder of the company, is also leaving, and he will be replaced by Tammy Alboran, who's an Uber executive. She becomes the chief legal officer. It was a really buoyant day in the main session Monday. The Nasdaq 100 up for a fourth straight day, its best run of gains since early July. And as you said, that eye on a key August CPI print. We want to see inflation cooling because of a big Fed meeting next week. Also in the market, less performance in the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index, or SOX, yields kind of holding steady. And Bitcoin actually had a pretty strong session as we tick over into Tuesday's session, around $22,500 per US token. Semiconductor space, a softer part of the market on Monday. News reports that the Biden administration is going to codify, firm up, expand its curbs of US exports of chip technology to China. It was principally the chip equipment makers, those that make the machines, that make the chips, that were the worst performers on the SOX, including the likes of AMD. And as always, so much technology news to go over. Some of the names we're keeping an eye on, sticking with the chip space. Intel up 0.3%, but a Bloomberg scoop, sources say they're reevaluating their spin-off and IPO of Mobileye, the automotive tech company. They're thinking about a lesser value or lower valuation and delaying that, market conditions such as they are. Apple having its best day since May. Early pre-order data for the latest generation of iPhone looking strong. And Twitter, you know all about that, down 1.9%. A third rejection of a third Musk attempt to walk away from this deal.
Indeed. All right, Ed Ludlow, thank you. Let's talk a little bit more about Twitter. Musk now, Twitter rejecting that latest effort to cancel the deal yet again, saying it's, quote, invalid and wrongful. His third attempt to walk away from this deal, and third time's not the charm. That whistleblower, former Twitter employee Peter Zatko, a.k.a. Mudge, testifies before the Senate Judiciary Committee Tuesday. Here to discuss, Bloomberg's Jeff Feely in Wilmington, Delaware, and Alex Barinka in San Francisco. So, Alex, first of all, what are we expecting to hear from Peter Zatko on Capitol Hill tomorrow?
Yeah, so I think that the hearing tomorrow will probably follow two lanes of conversation. There'll be questions around the data privacy concerns, around the bots and fake accounts that Zatko has alleged that the company either ignored or didn't disclose. But I also expect the Senate Judiciary Committee to focus on some more of the data privacy issues that legislators care about that might be a little less relevant to the acquisition, but increasingly relevant as DC has been able to push through antitrust legislation, but has not gotten a lot of traction on data privacy. So they might take this opportunity to lean into some of those themes as well.
Now, Jeff, Elon Musk is trying to use new information that Twitter signed a $7 million separation agreement with Peter Zatko back in June. Musk trying to use that as a reason to cancel the deal. You know, what exactly is he trying to say here?
Well, he's basically saying that that payment constituted something outside the ordinary course of business. When you have these buyout agreements going on, one of the provisions that's often in there says that the seller has to continue to run the business in the ordinary course. Mr. Musk's contention is this $7 million severance payment was somehow tied to silencing Mr. Zatko so that he would not bring forth his complaints publicly. So that he claims is another reason that there's been a material adverse event and he should be able to cancel the deal.
It does sound like a lot of money, $7 million to get this guy to go away, Alex, and then he ends up, blowing the whistle anyway. Can you tell us a little bit more about what happened here between Zatko and Twitter?
Yeah, Emily, the sticker shock that you're having might be some of the reason why Musk feels like he can lean into this as an argument that this type of settlement should have been brought to his camp and is outside the regular course of business. So this was a guy who was an executive on the security side, was brought in a number of years back and oversaw a lot of the important kind of security pieces and the teams that worked on those things internally at Twitter. So he is a person who, claims that he has kind of insider knowledge on this. The company says, well, look, you could have actually made some changes on these things. So there's an interesting kind of back and forth here. Emily, I will point out, it has been reported that in that settlement agreement, he was still allowed to blow the whistle to the government if there were any issues. So $7 million, definitely sticker shock, definitely that kind of third strike that Elon is claiming allows him to get out of the deal, but did leave that door open for us to hear from Peter Zatko tomorrow morning.
Now, Jeff, has a judge weighed in on this latest request from Musk and this latest information about the separation agreement? And if not, when are we going to hear from her?
Well, the judge has allowed Mr. Musk to amend his counterclaims in the case to add the whistleblower's allegations. I want to point out that the $7 million payment may be contractual. We do not know if this was per a severance agreement with Mr. Zatko. So I wouldn't automatically recoil at the $7 million number. We still need to find out what that's all about. I doubt we're going to learn that tomorrow either.
So how are you expecting this testimony from Zatko tomorrow to be folded into the case that, of course, is building up to this trial coming up in mid-October, Jeff?
His testimony tomorrow about the national security stuff and potential spies within Twitter's employee group are the things that the senators are going to be focusing on. The folks that we're concerned about is going to be his allegation that he raised the question about how many spam and robot accounts were embedded within the customer base, and the Twitter, his colleagues' lack of interest in finding that out. That's the key question in the trial coming up, because that's where Mr. Musk has put all his chips in terms of defense arguments.
Well, clearly, both parties are going to be watching this testimony with bated breath. Alex, any word from Twitter about the latest salvo or how any of this potentially changes their plans?
So they basically came out and said, look, we don't buy the argument that the separation agreement is a viable excuse. I know that the Twitter camp will also be watching this very closely, as will a lot of the shareholders who are potentially making their voices heard in the shareholder vote tomorrow. I would think if things go really far down the line of privacy concerns, if there's a lot of kind of interest in the data security piece that are unrelated to the acquisition, that would just be another thing to add to the list of Twitter CEOs' kind of big ticket items to care about. Twitter has not been brought in to DC as often as a lot of the larger social media peers. So I think internally you could argue there's a lot of distractions going on at the company right now. And if they do get some traction in terms of legislators' arguments that data privacy should be more important, then Emily, I would add that to the list of kind of some of these ancillary concerns that are outside of just operating the business.
All right, Alex Barinka, Jeff Feely, continuing to cover this evolving legal drama for us. Thank you both for joining us. Meantime, a story that we continue to watch. Intel is scaling back expectations for its Mobileye IPO. According to Bloomberg sources, the move could delay the share sale until next year if market conditions don't improve. Intel expects the IPO to value the self-driving tech business at as much as $30 billion. Reuters and others reported earlier potential valuations of more than $50 billion. All right, coming up, how Amazon and other streaming giants are disrupting one of the bastions of traditional television, that is sports broadcasting rights. A top Amazon executive with us next. This is Bloomberg. It is a historic week for sports broadcasting. This Thursday, Amazon Prime Video kicks off an 11-year, $13 billion deal. This is the first time a streaming service has had exclusive rights to NFL games in the United States, and a big challenge to major networks. Amazon told advertisers it expects an average audience of 12.6 million viewers per game, this according to the Wall Street Journal. Vice President of Amazon Global Sports Video, Marie Donahue, is the architect of Amazon's live sports ambitions, and she joins us now to discuss. So a huge week, Marie, for Amazon. And for the first time, fans are going to have to log on to Amazon Prime Video to see this big game on Thursday nights. Does this seem like a turning point to you in sports broadcasting?
Absolutely. I mean, I look, honestly, I think this will be as big as when the NFL went to cable back in 1987. You know, we know how NFL games legitimized and grew the cable business, and we think the same thing can happen for streaming.
So you led negotiations for this $13 billion 11-year deal. It is a massive deal. How did you convince the NFL that Amazon was the place to be?
Right. Well, you know, the NFL cares a lot about scale and reach, and we've got that. We've got that better than any other streaming service. They also care about production, and they knew we showed in Europe, and we also showed by our work in the US that we can produce the best broadcast for fans. It's incredibly important to them. And one of the most exciting things for me is they care about innovation. You know, the NFL has been able to stay top of mind for sports fans for decades because they innovate and they move forward and they have that confidence. And that was one of the biggest tenets in our deal with the NFL. We agreed to push each other and to continue to push each other on innovating on behalf of sports fans. And it's something that's personally really exciting and something that really excites the team.
What are your goals with audience numbers? I understand we've got this Wall Street Journal number that you're expecting 12.6 million viewers. Is that correct? I also understand the typical viewership is more like 16.5 million. Are you hoping or thinking that you can get there or bigger?
Right. Well, you know, our number one focus is delivering the absolute best broadcast for fans. And the trends are in our favor. Everyone knows that more and more fans, particularly sports fans, are moving to streaming. This won't happen overnight. This is an 11-year deal, but we feel really strongly that if you start with fans, you serve the fans, they will come. And so we're excited. We had our preseason game 2 weeks ago, and the reaction from fans was just fabulous. And we're really excited to get on the field this Thursday.
Thursday, the Chargers taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. Talk to us then about how this benefits Amazon more broadly. You know, what's going to be your measure of success? Is it driving audience numbers? Is it driving more Prime memberships? Is it getting more customers to buy more Amazon products?
Yeah, absolutely. So I hate to sound repetitive, but at Amazon, we start with customers. I call them sports fans. And so number one, we think we can serve sports fans better. We can serve customers better. But if we wouldn't be in this if we didn't think we could improve the experience and make it better for fans. But absolutely, as you said, Emily, there are great business opportunities here. Number one, Prime Video is a membership service, so we can attract more members to Prime. There are plenty of people who have Prime who maybe haven't streamed video on Prime Video. And then there are other folks who come in for Thursday Night Football and find things like Lord of the Rings. So we think particularly in the Prime membership opportunity is huge. We think that opportunity is huge for us. And, we haven't even talked about advertising. Advertising, this is a game changer for advertising at Amazon. We have a very strong business already, but you can't beat, this is the most premium video advertising inventory out there. So it's a huge game changer for us in terms of advertising.
So how do you plan to leverage targeted advertising and do some things differently that maybe a traditional network wouldn't be able to do, given all of the data and other ways you have to reach your customers?
Right. Well, I would start with, we've done a deal with Nielsen. So we actually are the first streamer to do a deal with Nielsen. So we'll have ratings every week. So we think that's really important because that is what advertisers and the industry follows, or Nielsen ratings. On top of that, as you say, we have first-party data, and we'll use that data not only to measure our fans and to serve them better, but also to serve advertisers better. We can actually use that first-party data to make the advertising more relevant, and more targeted, and more directed. So it's an incredible opportunity.
Now, talk to us about the experience. Is there going to be a pregame show, a halftime show, sideline reporters? How is this going to be different than a traditional network experience?
Right. So first of all, we start with the basics. We have the best broadcast. We think we will have the best game broadcast in the business. I mean, I've been in sports 20 years, and you always have to remember it starts and ends with the game. So we've got iconic broadcasters like Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit. We've got Kaylee Hartung on the sidelines. This will be the absolute broadcast. We've got more cameras than anybody. So when you turn on your big screen television or whatever device, or on every piece of glass, whatever you watch the game, you can sit back and relax and enjoy that huge big screen experience. But on top of that, as you mentioned, Emily, we're an OTT service, so we're not satisfied with that. The bar for us is really high. We want to innovate. So we're going to offer all sorts of innovation and customized experience for fans. We'll have alternate feeds. You can watch the game. You can sit down and watch with your family and watch the Dude Perfect. Or you can explore our X-ray experience, which is actually, without ever leaving the game, you can see all sorts of data and statistics and replays. The point of X-ray is actually to put the tools that normally you have to wait for a producer or director to say, oh, let me see that replay. Let me show you some extra stats. We're going to put that in the hands of fans. And then, of course, we have all the content around the game. So we have pregame, postgame. We'll have a great late night show. And we've got the best talent in the business there. We've got Carissa Thompson. We've got Hall of Famer Tony Gonzalez. We've got two guys right off the field, Richard Sherman and Ryan Fitzpatrick. They're going to be amazing. The conversation these guys have, they were on the field with these guys just last year. So they'll take fans literally inside the thinking of the players on the field. And then we've got a great surrounding cast. And then we're also going to offer the game and the programming on Twitch. Remember, we have Twitch, which is an incredibly young interactive audience. And, Twitch is all about watching with your community. So we're excited. We're going to expand the communal nature of sports through Twitch. And then on top of it, we've got some shows during the rest of the week. So we are going to surround fans all week. And as you can tell from my excitement, we're just thrilled to get going.
I assume you've got some contingency plans. Are you sure all cable fans are going to be able to find the game? Are you planning for any kind of onboarding issues or an onslaught of onboarding issues potentially?
Absolutely. So we're on every piece of glass, as I mentioned. And if you come to any Amazon service, you're not going to be able to miss this game. And it'll be seamless and it'll be easy. But also, we've got great third-party marketing, too, to also help you. But of course, we're prepared. We've done this in Europe. We've done this in other places in the US. We actually have all sorts of online tools, and we're old school. We also have phone numbers you can call. And we actually put extra people on hand because we know that it's incredibly frustrating when you call sometimes when you call those services and you don't get an answer. We will have literally thousands of people ready to take those phone calls if needed. So we're incredibly excited. We've been preparing for this for years. This is really hard work and it's really complicated, and we've been building towards it for years. We think we're the company, no other company is in position to serve a game like this to a concurrent audience like we're going to experience this season.
So the big question, of course, then is what next? Is Amazon planning to bid on any of the remaining college sports rights or the NBA? What else do you have coming?
Well, obviously, I can't talk about specifics, but what I can tell you, Emily, is we approach everything from the sports fan perspective. So the first thing we do is we say, how do fans consume this content? Is there a way we can do better? Is there a way we can serve those fans better? And of course, then what can we do differently? And does it make sense for us? So there's literally, I can't really think of any sports rights we don't look at. I mean, we're in business with the NFL. We're in business with the Yankees. You know, we provide local games exclusively in New York. So we're excited. The partners who are willing to come with us are the ones who are forward focused, fan focused, and really want to go, as you know, the old Wayne Gretzky, want to go where the puck is going, not where it's been.
So last quick question. I know you used to work at ESPN. Amazon has a huge content budget. I wonder if you're also thinking about making new sports content. You know, I believe you were involved in the 30 for 30 series, you know, and maybe original sports documentaries and other ways that you can build out Amazon as a big player in where you go to see things about sports.
Absolutely. So we've already started that, Emily. We've got a series, All or Nothing, that we've done in the US and Europe. We've got great success with that. And actually, 5 months ago, we started a separate sports group. In my group, we're hiring or staffing up if any young filmmakers out there want to come work with us. So we're excited. We think when you have that additional content, not only is it valuable on its own, we have a high bar, we want it to be excellent content, but it also engages fans more with the athletes and the teams that then we show on live events. It's a really great ecosystem to get going. And we found that in Europe when we have our All or Nothings on the Premier League teams, we noticed that those fans understand and appreciate those players and those teams even more when they understand what they've gone through and seen behind this and seen behind the scenes.
All right, Marie Donahue, I believe you got to catch a flight to Kansas City. So thank you so much for joining us. Amazon Global Sports Video Vice President. Excited to see how it all shakes out on Thursday. We're going to be right back. This is Bloomberg. Early indicators suggest Apple's iPhone 14 pre-orders are stronger than expected. Pre-order data showing that the iPhone 14 Pro Max is the best-selling model, and orders for the iPhone 14 are tracking slightly ahead of the iPhone 13. Wedbush saying it's seeing strong demand trends and estimates 240 million of the 1 billion total iPhone users haven't upgraded their phones in nearly 4 years. Apple shares popping on the news the most since May. Coming up, Micron breaking ground on a new fab in Idaho. CEO Sanjay Mehrotra with us next. Welcome back to Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco. Trevor Milton, the founder and former executive chair of Nikola, went on trial starting this week, charged with lying about the company's products to mislead investors and prop up the stock. Let's get back to New York and Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow, who was in court today for the first stages. Ed, what happened?
Yeah, so Trevor Milton faces 2 counts of securities fraud, 2 counts of wire fraud. And you're right, Em, that prosecutors have to prove that A, Trevor Milton lied about the company's technology and its products, and that in so doing, he misled investors, and also, therefore, that investors made the choice to invest in his company, Nikola, based on that information. He arrived Monday morning, Southern District of New York here in Manhattan, for the trial, which was supposed to take place in July, but Judge Edgardo Ramos granted a delay until September 12th, Monday, so that they could take on that 4th count of wire fraud. It's a 5-week trial, so we started Monday with jury selection. Tuesday, we expect opening arguments, with the prosecution having around 3 weeks to present their evidence, and then the defense will come in. And the burden of proof is on the prosecution here. This trial could run for around 5 weeks through to the end of October. And as I say, the focus for the prosecution is convincing the jury that A, Trevor Milton lied, misled investors about the company's progress, its technology, what it had actually achieved, but also that investors, retail investors in particular, were moved or motivated to invest in the stock for that reason. You'll remember at its peak, this was the poster child of the 2021 SPAC wave of EV companies that went public via a SPAC. And at one point, it had a market cap greater than Ford. Things are very different now, Em.
All right. Ed Ludlow, thank you. We'll continue to wait for your updates as the trial progresses. Meantime, Micron just broke ground on a new memory manufacturing fab in Boise, Idaho, the first of its kind in the U.S. in 20 years. The chipmaker plans to invest roughly $15 billion on the plan over the next several years, making it the largest private investment ever made in the state. I caught up with Micron CEO Sanjay Mehrotra in an exclusive interview earlier. Take a listen to what he had to say.
We have been our research and development technology leader from Boise for decades, and now being able to combine it with leading edge memory manufacturing technology, this will just accelerate time to market of new technologies, new solutions for the benefit of the customers, as well as, of course, driving U.S. leadership in semiconductor technology. So this is a big day, this is a big announcement, and this is enabled by CHIPS Act, which was just signed by President Biden a month ago, because that is really important in terms of leveling the playing field. So this is very exciting. It will bring 17,000 jobs here in Idaho over the course of the rest of the decade. We will be starting production sometime in 2025. Of course, construction to start sometime in 2023. And this will be transformative. And we'll be bringing on production, of course, in line with the industry's demand.
Now, Micron, of course, already has many plants across Asia. How does this impact operations globally? Does this mean you'll always consider building in the U.S. first?
Of course, we have, as you noted, well-diversified footprint across Asia for our manufacturing. And again, CHIPS Act now enables a leveling the playing field, whereby now the production can become cost-effective with the support of grants from CHIPS and investment tax credits. So, of course, we will continue to invest in our plants in Asia as well. But when we look at the demand for memory, by 2030 timeframe, semiconductor memory demand is expected to double in terms of revenue opportunity. That requires new wafer capacity. That's why we started this plant here, announced this plant here, and actually had the ceremony that launches the construction for this plant. And this will basically enable us. This will basically enable us to meet the growing demand for the 2030 era for semiconductor memory technology. Of course, we'll keep investing in technology transitions in our overseas plants as well.
Is the money that's been set aside by the U.S. government enough? Others have called it a start.
That's right. It's a good start. And the support in terms of CHIPS grants as well as investment tax credits will help us level the playing field with foreign governments, which have been supporting investments in semiconductors in their countries for a very long time. Of course, companies like Micron will continue to invest from their operating cash flow as well as from the balance sheet. And of course, big part of the investments will come from Micron, but the CHIPS grants are absolutely essential. Without CHIPS, we would not have been able to make this investment, this announcement today.
Do you have any concerns that it's governments and not market forces setting the agenda for what is needed, and that could, down the line, create excess capacity?
It is extremely important, as I noted earlier, that we will be bringing on production in the future in line with the industry demand projections, the end market demand projections. And of course, each of the companies that is bringing their own semiconductor production up will be managing, should be managing, and I can speak for Micron, we will of course be managing with discipline our supply growth, keeping an eye on demand growth, and keeping them balanced to the best of our abilities.
Now, you and Micron warned about slowing demand about a month ago, which triggered a broader concern about a slump across the chip industry overall. What can you tell us about demand as you see it now? Is it indeed slowing down? And if so, how much?
This is for the memory industry, for the semiconductor memory industry. This is a challenging environment, primarily driven by inventory adjustments that our customers across various end markets are making. And that's really impacting the industry demand and supply balance. Of course, we have taken actions in this regard in terms of adjusting our supply growth plans for the future. But you know, Emily, very well that in semiconductors, actions taken, it takes a while before the results are achieved. So it will take us few quarters before I believe industry demand and supply and balance will be restored. But what's important here is what we are announcing today is about the long-term future. The demand drivers for long terms, AI, 5G, autonomous, and of course across data center, industrial, automotive, those demand drivers in terms of consumption of memory requirement for the long term are intact. And that's why to meet that growing demand requirement of the future, investments need to be made now, because there's a long lead time to build these fabs, and the production will only start in the second half of this decade, and it will, of course, be managed in line with the demand projections for the future.
So clearly a huge step for Micron breaking ground on this fab today. I'm curious what you think this means for the broader industry, though. If demand is slowing, or at least for a few quarters, as you say, how long do you think we could be in a cycle of oversupply? Not just where Micron is concerned, but across the broader chip industry.
So look, inventory adjustments take a while to work through the system. And I can tell you that memory industry tends to be cyclical. But what's important is that the health of the memory industry is really ultimately driven by long-term demand trends. And I think that's important, that as near-term perturbations take place due to factors such as inventory adjustments, actions are taken fast to bring demand and supply in balance. But of course, it takes a while, it takes few quarters for that demand supply to get in balance. But important thing is that actions are taken fast. We are being responsive in that regard, but we are also managing for the long haul, the long haul in terms of the growing demand, needing more investments in order to meet the requirements of our customers as we look ahead to the second half of this decade.
There's, of course, been a lot of talk about the competition between the U.S. and China on this front. Just how big is China in the memory market in particular? And is it something that the U.S. government should be concerned about?
So there are Chinese companies with the support of the Chinese government, that have been making certain progress with respect to the memory. And of course, these are taken into account when we look at overall industry supply and the industry supply growth expectations of the future. And what we are here doing at Micron is continuing to stay ahead in terms of the technology capability. Of course, we always want a level playing field and, of course, respect for intellectual property, but we have to continue to drive our own technology roadmap. Today, Emily, Micron is a leader, global leader in semiconductor DRAM as well as NAND technology. And this is where, right from here in Boise, the teams that have produced tremendous amount of innovation that in the future we'll be able to combine with bringing into manufacturing right here as well. These are all CHIPS Act enabled activities that actually ultimately help secure the national security of the US as well by having manufacturing of critical infrastructure needs, the chips being made here in the future in the semiconductor industry.
Micron CEO Sanjay Mehrotra there. All right, coming up, the future of sports. Could it be NFTs? We're going to talk about that with SoRare's COO Ryan Spoon next. This is Bloomberg.
We still have have some work to do. I know security being a big part of that. You're seeing some of the cybersecurity investing going way up. But in the grand scheme, and you look at the thesis of the blockchain and NFTs and how it should work, it definitely gives the athlete the opportunity to go directly to this fan base. It gives the fan, insights that's a lot different, and it's essentially cutting out the middleman.
That was NBA champion and investor Andre Iguodala speaking about the intersection of sports and NFTs. Let's dive deeper into this conversation in our crypto report now with fantasy sports and blockchain company SoRare, which is backed by, among others, tennis great Serena Williams. The company has already inked partnerships with Major League Soccer and Major League Baseball and is now adding the NBA with the first free-to-play fantasy game based on digital cards. SoRare COO Ryan Spoon joins us now for more on this deal. So talk to us, Ryan, about how this partnership with the NBA came together.
First, thanks for having me. It came together. It's just a very natural evolution. You heard Andre talk there about the importance of and the opportunities that blockchain enables. We all know I spent years at ESPN on the digital side, how important and fun and how fast growing fantasy is. We know that on the collectible side. So when you tie fantasy and collectibles with the blockchain on a global scale, the NBA is a perfect product and partner. And it's our third launch. As you mentioned, we have a big global soccer, global football game and community that's been very successful. A couple months ago, we announced and then launched our MLB partnership, and so we're MLB. And we're super excited to be doing this with the NBA right up around the upcoming season launch.
This puts you in competition with NBA Top Shot. How do your platforms stack up?
So we are very specifically focused on NFT-based games. So players collect their cards, you come in, and everyone, once you register, you get a free set of cards. And with those cards, you play the game. In the game, you're managing the cards. So like a fantasy draft, but instead of ESPN, who I know and love and spent time this weekend doing my fantasy drafts, here, the player has the agency to pick and manage his or her roster. As you do that, you end up collecting cards as rewards. That's very different. I have admiration for Top Shot. I have admiration, and I'm a user of a lot of other platforms. But in our space, the fantasy-based games, we are the leader, and these relationships are also, this is the lane that we are exclusively focused on, and we think we have demonstrated real leadership in.
Now, you've launched soccer and baseball NFT projects previously. No surprise, Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani are the most used cards. What kind of traction have you seen?
So soccer has obviously a larger runway. It is very successful. There's a very large community behind it. Obviously, it's a global game. The user base on our side is global. The traction is global. And when I say geographically diverse, it really is from all segments of the world. We closed last year, and we still believe we're in early days. We closed last year doing $325 million in card sales on the platform. We exceeded that in the first 2 quarters of the year, and now you begin to introduce MLB. We did that end of July. The traction there has been really positive and encouraging. Also a global footprint, which we think is important. Baseball is a really excellent product here, and sport because of the stats-based nature, the movement, the surprise, and NBA is going to be fantastic. We all know how important the stars are and the players, and for what it's worth noting, our deal on the NBA side is with both the NBA and the NBA PA. So these are licensed, player-driven cards. And I also think it's worth noting that MLB's biggest day on the platform was when we announced NBA last week. And so that's a really important example of how we think all these sports can fit together, how the global nature of these games hopefully works together. And this concept of being able to collect a Giannis card or a Mike Trout or a Kylian Mbappe and do that across the entire platform, that's a really big, exciting idea.
All right, good stuff. Ryan Spoon, COO of So Rare. Well, Andre Iguodala is excited about it. That should get some folks excited. Thanks, Ryan, so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, coming up, Blue Origin's aborted rocket launch. We're going to have all the details on what went wrong and what happens next. This is Bloomberg. Blue Origin aborted a launch of its suborbital New Shepard rocket moments after takeoff. This happened in West Texas, and it is the first major failure for Jeff Bezos' company in several years. Bloomberg's Lauren Gresh joins us now from Austin with more details. So, Lauren, what happened?
Well, we actually don't have a lot of details at the moment. Basically, all we know is what we saw on the live stream of the launch today. This was a pretty regular routine launch for Blue Origin. They were launching research payloads, many of which were funded by NASA. No people were on board, thankfully, but it was meant to be a pretty regular launch for them, sending these payloads to space and back. And then sometime a little after a minute into the launch, something seemed to go wrong with the engine, and it triggered the abort escape system for the capsule.
How significant is a failure like this in what would have been a pretty routine launch?
I think Blue Origin got really lucky today because there was no people on board. They have a pretty good track record when it comes to their flights. They only really suffered one partial failure really early in their testing regime. So this is the first time in pretty much all of New Shepard's history that they've had a major failure like this. So I think it's probably going to be a while before we see New Shepard fly again.
So what is next here? When something like this happens, a significant failure like this, do you go back to the drawing board? Can years pass potentially, as we've seen with NASA, before someone else, before they try to attempt this once again?
Yeah, it really depends on the source of the failure. The FAA already said today that they're going to be looking into this. Fortunately, no one was hurt today, and the booster that you saw break away from that capsule fell into a designated hazard zone. So ultimately, everyone is safe. But yes, the FAA said they will look into it, and New Shepard won't fly again until they get to the root of the problem. And it really, like I said, depends on what the source of the issue is. With these commercial companies, they can be a little bit more nimble when it comes to return to flight. We've seen SpaceX return to flight pretty quickly after some anomalies in the past. And so maybe it could be similar for Blue Origin. We just can't say for sure because we really don't know what caused it.
Can you put this into the context of Blue Origin's broader ambitions? Of course, I was there the day Jeff Bezos went into space. They have sent other folks up there, celebrities up there. Talk to us about how this fits into the broader and longer term plans. Of course, he's talked about this space colony and more.
Well, I think it might be a tad worrying for folks who might have a ticket to fly with Blue Origin. This was a rocket specifically geared toward launching payloads, but it is essentially the same rocket that they used to send people to the edge of space and back. However, some comfort can be had in the fact that it kind of worked as intended, this in-flight abort system. Basically, what you saw is as soon as the system detected there was a problem with the rocket, motors fired on the bottom of the capsule and immediately separated the capsule from the rocket, and that landed safely in the desert. So presumably, if there had been people on board, they would have been just fine and would have landed safely. Can't say for sure, and thankfully there weren't any people on board. But the system did seem to work as designed, so there is some comfort in that. But if I had a ticket, I might be a little nervous in the future.
All right, point taken. Bloomberg's Lauren Gresh, who covers space for us. Thank you So much for that update, and that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology Tuesday. Melinda Gates will be joining us to talk about her foundation's efforts to fight poverty and gender gaps. And don't forget to check out our podcast wherever you get your podcast. I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg.